Hey folks, FallRC here. Video for you today on winches for your RC models. Generally they're going to be used on things like a Axel SCX10 or a Trailfinder 2, but you could put a winch on any RC model you want to. I'm not going to be talking about servo winches today. I'm looking at the kind of replica scale winches. So we're either talking about a 3 racing winch here. This is the 1/10 scale. They do make a 1/8 scale as well. Or we've got the RC 4-wheel drive replica worn winch. Links in the description for both of these. So I'm not going to talk about winch controllers today. You have to give these things power. Quite how you do that is up to you. The 3 racing unit comes with a winch controller. This one doesn't. The old RC 4-wheel drive Bulldog you could have a winch controller for. There's third-party controllers out there. HOK Performance, there's a link in the description, make good winch controllers for 2 or 3 position switches, yada yada yada. If you want to look about winch controllers, go have a look on Google and so on. I'm just going to talk about installing these and some tips and tricks on things like running your cable, maintenance, and a few other little interesting things about hooks and so on. So here's the 2 main things we're looking at: 3 racing, RC 4-wheel drive. So essentially they do the same thing, both got a motor on the side and a spool and a hook, but they are very, very different beasts. As you can see, the RC 4-wheel drive winch is significantly longer than the 3 racing. It's also thicker and it's also taller. This one is made of a metal chassis, very good quality. This is plastic, not as good quality, but to be honest with you, it works fine. This one comes shipped with nice stickers, this one doesn't, but you can get stickers from various places. And I've stuck some on this other one here I've been running for a while to make it look nicer. These have been peeling off because it's spent half its life underwater, but there you go. So you can make them look pretty much the same. There's a slight size difference. Does the size difference matter? Well, yes, actually it does. For example, I've recently been fiddling around with this Rampage recovery bumper on my SCX10, and this has got holes drilled in here to fit on the plate from the RC 4-wheel drive winch. I've had to turn this plate round because in the normal position, the end of the winch here was actually fouling on this part of the metal of the bumper, so I had to turn that round and mount the winch back a bit, which means I can't get the bumper as far onto the model as I should have been able to. Now for things like that, you can buy RC 4-wheel drive make a worn 9.5 CTI winch CNC mounting plates, ZS1168. In here you get 3 different mounting plates of various sizes and layouts and a bunch of screws. So you can see here you've got one that's like that, one that's not quite so long sticking out, and then one that's completely different. So that will allow you to pick up on these 4 screws on the winch and then have these mounting holes shoving back and forwards for problems like this bumper. So that's great if you've got a RC 4-wheel drive winch, but annoyingly there isn't like a industry standard for the pitch of the holes on the plates. So you'll see here that the 4 holes do not line up between your RC 4-wheel drive there and your 3 racing. And I've not found a set of 3 racing adapter plates, but to be honest with you, it's quite thin metal. You can probably get some sheet steel and make your own up. But thing to note is that if you have bumpers that are pre-drilled for RC 4-wheel drive winches, like the old Bulldog that I think is being discontinued, or the new worn one, those holes will not work for your 3 racing winch. You have to make up an adapter or drill some more holes. So that's mounting them generally. Once you've got your winch mounted on your bumper, so for example here on my old Rubicon plastic one, I drilled some holes in the plate on the winch and bolted them on. You get it on there one way or the other, but then you'll probably run into some problems as follows. First of all, depending on the winch you buy, you may have a hook like this on a 3 racing. It's a nice little sprung loaded hook. That's handy because it can clip on and won't fall off of what you're hooking onto, but it's not particularly strong, so chances are you'll break that. So then you might end up doing like I did, which was I got a King Kong hook from RC 4-wheel drive. Now these are really, really tough, but they don't have a sprung loaded clip, so they'll fall off unless you've got under tension. The other thing to note about these, if you want to thread them up, probably can't see this on this particular hook, but you run your cable around and back again and it can sort of chafe slightly there. To reduce that, if you want to, you can buy these little things. These are called cable thimbles or threading thimbles. It took me a long time to track down some of these of the right size. You want to look on, for example, eBay Some jewellery sellers sell these, and these are tiny little kind of copper, or you can get them in silver, little bent pieces of metal, and your cable will go through the hole on one side and round and back, so you can actually fit that onto your hook here and run your cable through, and that smooths things out. So that's cable thimbles if you're interested. You don't have to use those on your hook. So okay, maybe you've upgraded your hook to one of these when it pops off. Good news is that relatively recently RC 4-wheel drive have started selling as a separate item their replica worn hook. This is RC 4-wheel drive 1/10 worn hook, part number Z-S1011, link in the description. You get some stickers with it, and it's essentially the same hook that you get with a replica worn winch, which is a nice strong hook, and it's got the just about get this into shot here, it's got this sprung loaded clasp just here, which once you clip it over something will flick back and lock the hook onto whatever cable or bull bar or whatever you're hooking onto. So I would recommend the RC 4-wheel drive replica worn hook. It is a really good product. So okay, you've upgraded your hook, so you're not going to be breaking your hook. The second thing is your winch line itself. Now all the kind of these two winches come with a string essentially for your cable. Don't do what I did, which is go out and bought a nice long amount of 0.5mm 7-strand stainless steel cable. It looks lovely when it's wrapped onto the winch, but it's very springy, so you see I'm trying to bend it here and it keeps popping back. If you have that wrapped around your spool, unless you keep tension on the line at all times, which just isn't going to happen in the real world, on the spool it will just bing and it'll expand out, and then generally you'll find it hops over this side. On all these winches there's a gap between the spool and the gearbox, and your line will hop into that gap and get wedged and stuck, and it can't turn round, and you're stuffed and you have to take the whole winch apart. So I don't recommend stainless steel cable. What I do recommend is fishing line. Now this is monofilament fishing line, £25 rated. That's plenty strong enough for pretty much anything you'd do with trucks like this. This wasn't particularly expensive, and I've got 460 meters of it. That'll last forever. You can get, if you search for braided carp line, you'll get a slightly floppier, even smoother and stronger cable than this, or fishing line than this, but any sort of tough fishing line is really good for winch cables. Oh, by the wonders of video, we've gone into the future where I have actually tried some braided fishing line. I thought I'd add this to the video because I am so pleased with this. So I was saying that monofilament fishing line is pretty good, and it is. You know, it's cheap and you get absolutely loads of it, and you can get it in a reasonable breaking strain, and it tends to do the job okay. It is a little bit springy, but not too bad. The reason I tried the braided line was I have broken the monofilament a couple of times, not by just literally pulling on it and snapping it, but because I had it wrapped around something. Either it was maybe running over a rock and dragging on the rock, or maybe around a bit of a tree branch, and that friction, that abrasion on the cable seems to have deteriorated it and snapped it. So I've tried some braided line. This is more expensive, not massively more expensive. You do have to shop around and get the right breaking strain, because all these fishing lines come in different breaking strains. This is 51, nearly 52 pounds breaking strain. It's called Fire Silk, but lots of other brands are available. What you're looking for is braided line, braided fishing line, or sometimes known as carp line. And here it is. As you can see, it looks more like a proper metal cable because you've got the twists of the braid. So it scores on scale points. It looks really nice when it's wrapped onto the winch. So there it is in situ, and yes, it's nice and strong. And what I'm really noticing is it does run over stuff really nicely and not tend to split or get torn. So that's your cable. You can rethread these fairly easily. You'll find if you pull all the cable off, you'll see there's a grub screw on the spool. You undo it and you can get the cable out and wind your new cable on. Why do you want to wind lots of cable on? Well, because the standard string cable that comes with these isn't that long. You can't always get down to a companion truck or up onto maybe a branch of a tree or something that you might need to. Also, if you want to do something like this, here's my pull pal that digs in the ground and gives me a ground anchor. I use a snatch block, so the winch cable comes round the drum here and goes back down to the truck and hooks on the truck. So this gives you a mechanical advantage. You kind of got like a 2-to-1, so you get half the speed of pull, but you get twice the strength. Now obviously you need twice the length of line for that. So get yourself some fishing line, restring your winch, and you can do stuff like that. Okay, so we've got our winch fitted onto the truck, we've improved our hook, we've improved our cable. Now one thing that you may find is that your cable keeps hopping off the edges of your drum, even though you're not using steel cable. Now there's two reasons for that. One is that these winches just have a gap and you might just get unlucky. Now what I've done on this one, I've put a washer in there to fill up the gap, and on my worn winch I've actually cut 2 discs of polycarbonate and just drilled through and made like a big polycarbonate washer. That will stop the cable getting in that gap. What you can get, this is a really fantastic idea here, one of my favourite new websites, maddogrc.com. They make a nice little product here that's called a scale winch upgrade kit, MDRC010, link in the description. And what you get in here is, it's just absolute genius. You get a nice little Fairlead, I'll talk about in a moment, and you get some, sorry I should have got this out of the bag earlier, you get some worn stickers. So this is really meant for your 3 racing winch. This will decorate that and make it look nice. And you get a lot longer and good quality silver line, and you get this little piece of Lexan. Now this is pretty much what I made for mine, but this is got a flat edge. The idea with that is you take your winch apart by undoing the 4 screws at the bottom and then the 2 screws on the top here, and then you can pull the winch apart, get the spool off, undoing the grub screw that locks the spool onto the drive shaft, and then this piece of plastic will sit in there. You put it over the output axle and it sits down like this and it fills the gap. Absolutely perfect, saves you having to find some Lexan and cut it. So I really do recommend this Mad Dog RC set. If you're in America, then you can get it shipped really easily. In the UK or elsewhere in Europe or somewhere else in the world, you're going to have to take your chances with customs, but they do come through all right. So that's the Mad Dog RC set. The other really nice thing about this, takes me nicely onto Fairleads. Fairleads, why are they? What are they? Okay, the Fairlead is the thing at the front of the winch that guides the cable onto the drum. Generally you'll have this thing with the rollers. They both, the RC 4-wheel drive and 3 racing, come with a roller type Fairlead, which I think is ugly as sin, and I do like to have the nice kind of smooth metal Fairlead. This one is from RC Rock Armour, and the Mad Dog RC kit comes with a Fairlead as well. But not all Fairleads are made equal, and depending on the size you're going to either have problems or not. Let me explain to you why. Now you can see this Fairlead compared to the bottom one, real big difference in size, and also the opening, and that's the key thing. Now if your Fairlead opening is wider than the drum where the cable's going on, you really do risk having the cable flipping off the sides. This Fairlead, for example from RC Rock Armour, is way too wide for the spool on my 3 racing winch. But what I did when I mounted this, I kept the black metal mount, which has actually got metal edges inside there. You can't quite see it, but it's stopping the cable hopping off. Now the nice thing about this spool is, and this is designed for going on a 3 racing one, you cut off the little rivets on the roller Fairlead, and this just bolts on with some bolts and nuts. This gives you a very nice small opening so that the cable is always going to be coming onto the spool at an angle so it won't pop off the edges. So that's useful for the 3 racing one, keeping a nice small Fairlead with the Mad Dog RC set. Or what you can do, and what I did on my RC 4-wheel drive winch, you can make your own little adapter. Let me show you what I mean here. Now this, I'm really stunned that RC 4-wheel drive have done this. This Fairlead on their replica worn winch is massive. You can see where I can get on the edge here. Now that is coming in wider than the edges of the spool, and you are really risking getting your cable popping off. Now if you get your Allen driver on the edge here, you have to be a bit careful. And don't lose these screws. It's a real nightmare if you lose these tiny screws. Right, so now I've got the RC4 drive Fairlead off, and you can see what I've put on the back here. This doesn't come with a kit. This piece of plastic is something I've cut out of some Lexan. I've just cut a rectangle of Lexan that fits over the back of the spool area and drilled some holes so the screws can go through. And then I've made, let's pop this off, there we go. I've made a slot in that, so that width of that is not as wide as the spool, so when the cable winds onto the spool it's never going to pop off the edges. And if you just cut a slot at the end, you can actually pop that onto your cable without having to take the hook off and stuff like that. So that's a top tip for you if you find your cables popping off because you've got quite a wide Fairlead for your winch. You can either go get yourself a smaller Fairlead, or with a simple piece of Lexan put that behind your existing Fairlead. So there you go, there's a quick barrage of information for you about winches for your models. Hope you found that useful. Any questions or comments, please do post them below. Thanks for watching.